This podcast is for anyone who has ever felt stuck, whether it's a major life transition, a dark night of the soul, or just staying small out of fear. If you've ever struggled to move forward, if you're repeating unhealthy patterns in relationships, or you have a black belt in beating yourself up, you were meant for more, and this podcast is for you. We'll get real, we'll get vulnerable, we'll probably cuss a little bit, and we'll get to the root of it all, your self-worth. With every step, you'll find the courage to rise. Welcome to episode 8 of the Courage to Rise podcast. So here in the United States, we're coming up on Thanksgiving this week. And aside from turkeys or tofurkeys and pies and whatever else Thanksgiving means to you, it's a great time to talk about what it means to actually be thankful and to give thanks. And so many people talk about having a gratitude practice, and you hear about it so much anymore. And the thing about some things that become very mainstream is sometimes the power gets taken away from them, or sometimes people begin to discount them as, I know, I got to be grateful, focus on gratitude, have a gratitude practice, right? And sometimes it loses the power behind it. And what we want to do is we want to bring focus back to why gratitude is important, why being grateful is so important, of what it really means, and breaking down what's really behind it so that we can reframe it into the positive practice that it's meant to be. So it doesn't feel like something heavy that we have to do, that we can remember why it's so important. Because in a fundamental level, remember that where focus goes, energy flows, and we will always have a confirmation bias in our brains. We will always find what we are choosing to focus on. If I tell you to walk out into the streets of your town right now and focus on red cars, or if I ask you to focus on the color red, you're going to all of a sudden see around you all the things that are red. Doesn't mean that all of a sudden, miraculously in that second, more things were painted red or turned red or what have you. It just means that your brain is being asked to focus on it. And this is such a powerful way to shift your day, to shift your mentality, to shift how you feel in your life. And sometimes people think it is too simple. Sometimes as humans, we like to complicate things, but really so much of how we operate, so much what forms our mood and our mindset and how we go through the world and how we create a fulfilling life is really quite simple. They're really very simple principles that we tend to overcomplicate. It really, on some level, your happiness on a day-to-day basis boils down to what are you focused on? What are the beliefs that you hold about it? What's the meaning that you're making of what's happening? And so when it comes to something like a gratitude practice, it really is about choosing to focus on what's good, on focus on what you can be grateful for, because you will always find what you choose to focus on. If you are unconsciously operating from a place of believing that all people are evil, of believing that bad things are going to happen to you, of believing that things just happen to you that are going to be negative or unpleasant, then you're going to find all of those things. You will find more of them. And if you choose to operate from a belief that the world is actually beautiful, certainly there are painful things that happen, but that on the whole, the world is beautiful, and that there's a lot of joy and a lot of things to find to be grateful for. It's not a denial that pain happens. It's merely choosing how you're going to operate, how you are going to show up in the world. Because on a fundamental level, I've said this before, but it's so true. There is really so little in this world that we can control. What we can control is how we show up in the world. And that is really the key to happiness. It is really the key to living a fulfilling life, is choosing what you're focused on. And conditioning a gratitude practice is about shifting your focus and creating the habit where that then becomes familiar, because our brains do have a negativity bias, and left to their own devices, we will tend to go down the path of finding all the things that are wrong. finding all the things that are going wrong, that are not going right for us, that are unpleasant, the things that people are doing to us. And that's the negativity bias. It kind of falls to the lowest common denominator, but you have the power and the ability to shift your focus and to condition your focus to look for positive things, to look for things you're grateful for. Even if you're walking down the street, maybe it's a really cold day. I, for one, don't tend to enjoy the cold when I have to go outside and walk my dog in the cold. Sometimes I have to be extra conscious of my mood because I can focus on how cold I am, how I don't want to be all bundled up, how I'd much rather be inside. But instead, you can choose to focus on what's good, how wonderful, how grateful I am to have these two legs that can move, that can get me downstairs, that can take me for a walk. It may sound so simple, but really it's very powerful because there's so much that we take for granted. And this is why so often you hear people have major realizations in their life when all of a sudden something deeply tragic or deeply confronting happens, because then their awareness is brought to really how many things we tend to take for granted. Think about it. Even the fact that you woke up this morning, that you can see. Think that there are many people who don't have that. And think of how your body is working. And even if maybe it's a little achy, it's a little creaky, you were able to get out of bed this morning. You were able to walk into the kitchen and make coffee. It's simple things like that when we bring awareness to those gratitudes, when we can focus on those things, it really helps shift us out of a lot of the negative mentality that we tend to get into. And I want you guys to know that I'm not saying any of this lightly. I'm saying this because I have observed this in my own experience time and time and time again, because like so many people, I fall into the same patterns, and I know this works because I have seen this in my own life. And I know when, you get in those moods or you get in those really bad negative cycles, and I know that I'm just as guilty of it. And I have been on a quest for a long time to figure out what does it take to live a really happy life, knowing that things are going to happen. Again, pain is inevitable. It's the suffering that's optional. And this is why I've been on such a quest. I am not sitting up here on top of a mountaintop telling you, oh, you have to do this, without having lived every single bit of it. I know that when I get really focused on things that are negative or focused on the bad things that are happening, you have to have some kind of pattern interrupt that's going to pull you out of that, pull you back to center and go, hold on, what am I focused on right now? I'm focused on all the things that are going wrong. I'm focused on all of the ways that, life isn't going my way right now. How in this moment, what is it that I can stop and focus on and find joy in? Or for the sake of this podcast, we're talking about gratitude. Where can I find gratitude? And really, it can be as simple as being grateful for what's going on in your body. Let's say you're just having a really shitty, crappy day. You're just really, your mental state is way spun out. You're super tired. You're really not very well resourced in anything else. Okay, let's stop. Let's bring your focus back to what can we be grateful for in this minute, and find 5 things you can be grateful for, even if it's as simple as, I'm grateful for my breath because, well, without it, you wouldn't be alive, obviously, to have this conversation or listen to this podcast or to have these problems, right? I'm grateful for my body. I'm grateful that it allows me to have these experiences. I'm grateful for, my dog, my family, my house, my whatever it is that you can find, and start to list things that you're grateful for, and it will start to shift that pattern away. Start to find ways that you can focus on something that's positive and that's a gift. Doesn't matter how small it is. I'm grateful for the cup of coffee that I'm drinking. I'm grateful for being able to walk outside and experience this freezing cold weather. Find something that is going to shift your focus and just bring awareness to what you're focused on. Next time you're feeling really nasty or down or unpleasant, bring your mind to, what am I focused on right now? Am I focused on all the things that are going wrong? Am I focused on how somebody is going to do me wrong, or I'm focused on the fact that these things always happen to me. What's the focus? Ask yourself that question, and I guarantee you that when you're feeling that way, you're not going to be focused on things that are really empowering. And so when you shift that focus and you can think about something that is going to shift your focus to something more empowering, to gratitude, to joy, it's so powerful. And this is why we condition it. Why when people say they have a gratitude practice of, in the morning or at night or at some point in the day, you have a practice of writing down the things that you're grateful for, is because it's literally conditioning your brain to find more of that, to find more of those things in your life. And the reason we make it a practice is just like physical fitness. It's just like conditioning a muscle or cardio conditioning. If you are used to running 3 miles a day, then it's not going to be hard for you to do that on a regular basis because you've become conditioned to do that. And so when you condition your mind to look for gratitude or to look for joy, it's going to become much easier and much more automatic that it's going to default to that rather than defaulting to the negativity bias. And the net effect of this over the course of your life is so powerful because our lives and our happiness is comprised of what we do on a daily basis. Think of it in terms, I like to make health and fitness analogies because they're very tangible. But think of it in terms of your health and fitness. If over the course of 5 years of your life, 10 years of your life, every day you are making decisions about your health, those are going to add up, right? So if you're making decisions every day to eat a healthy diet 85-90% of the time, because we all want to have our treats, right? That's part of life. But if you're making decisions every day that you're eating healthy 85-90% of the time, that you're taking care of your body, that you're moving your body in a healthy way, whether it's yoga or weight training or dance or running, whatever it is, if you're taking care of your body on a daily basis and you're making those decisions daily and weekly and monthly, then over the course of 5 and 10 years, those are going to add up to a net positive effect of health in your life. And it's the same thing with this idea of conditioning, because you've been conditioned to do it, and it no longer becomes, when you have a healthy lifestyle in that way, you're no longer putting as much energy into actively making those decisions, because it just becomes part of who you are and part of what you do. And there's not as much energy and focus that has to go into saying, oh, I have to eat healthy. It just becomes conditioned into your life. And that's the same thing with conditioning our focus, to condition it to look for the things that we're grateful for, or to look for the positives as opposed to looking for the negatives. And so make it a practice and start to condition that into your life, because it's going to create more joy and more ease and more peace in your life. And the more you operate from that place, the more you are going to naturally attract more positive experiences into your life. This is really what the law of attraction is about, and I don't want to get into that right now, but this is really what it's about, is when you're focused on positive things, you're literally going to attract more of that into your life. And I'll also challenge you, for those of you who are going to be, maybe spending the week with family, and sometimes family can, on occasion, be triggering, right? Try to focus on what you're grateful for in whoever it is that's triggering you in that moment, or try to focus on what you're grateful for about your parents or your children or your aunts, your cousins, whoever it is. Focus on things that you can really appreciate about them. Maybe even that drunk uncle who has politics that are completely opposite of yours, and you really can't fathom how in the world he can believe those things. Try to find something positive. Try to find something you can appreciate. Because again, this is about your life and finding more joy and more happiness in your life, and focusing on something that's positive to create a better state and a better mindset for you. And then you can take this a step further and share with the people in your life what you deeply appreciate about them. because this is something else that we don't often do. It's so much easier to criticize and to judge and to blame and to come from that place. What if we shifted it to finding what we appreciate about someone and sharing that with them? I appreciate that you always ask everybody for coffee, or, I appreciate that your house is always so clean, or I appreciate that you always go out of your way to make sure that everyone has what they need. Whatever it is that you can find something to appreciate about people in your life and tell them about it, and genuinely, and make sure that it's a genuine compliment, that it's something that you genuinely appreciate about them. But this is one of the ways that even, again, and I'm bringing it back to family, because during this week, a lot of us are all with our families, and that can be triggering, of genuinely finding something that you appreciate about them on a human level and focusing on that and sharing that gratitude with them and that appreciation with them. And I guarantee you that's going to help shift their state as well. I'll challenge you to try this experiment. If you don't already have a gratitude practice in your life, I'm going to challenge you to a gratitude practice for 21 days, because there's science behind it takes 21 days to form a new habit and to form new patterns in your brain. So I'm going to challenge you to a 21-day gratitude practice and challenge you to catch your focus when you find yourself in a bad mood or in a really negative state of mind. I'm going to challenge you to focus on something different, to observe where your focus is that's creating those negative feelings, that negative disempowered state. And I'm going to challenge you to shift your focus to something that is focused on gratitude or joy or something positive, and see how that changes your state. And do this for 21 days. And this will take us up into the Christmas holidays. So it's a great time to be resourced, right? Especially through what is typically a hectic season. And so this is a good time to practice this. Observe where your focus is going and realize that you have control over what you focus on, and that you can choose differently and start to condition a happier, more fulfilling focus into your life. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Courage to Rise podcast. Visit my website, couragetorise.com, for more information on one-on-one coaching, group coaching programs, and other upcoming events. Remember, life's too short not to sparkle. Sparkle on.